Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Modim l'simcha. All right, to all of our friends who are sitting in the back row, if I can hear you all the way up here, you guys are being a little too loud. So, over these last few days of Sukkot, we've spoken about two of the three commandments, two of the three mitzvot that are connected to this holiday. On the first day, Rabbi Ern spoke about the lulav and the etrog, the four species that are brought together, that talks about in our Torah, right? The palm branch, the willow, the myrtle, and the citron, and what the symbolism of those four species are. Yesterday, I spoke about the sukkah. We actually talked about the question of whether or not we can have a mobile sukkah. And can you build a sukkah on a wagon or on a ship or on top of a camel even? They were asking the questions, right? Does the sukkah have to be stationary, or can it be moving? We know a sukkah is supposed to be a temporary structure, but how temporary are we allowed to be? We had a great conversation about that. Today, we're going to speak about the third of the three commandments specific to Sukkot, which is, it's always the one people forget about it, but it's the most important one. What? So to dwell in a sukkah is actually part of the sukkah mitzvah that we talked about yesterday. Debbie, be happy, be joyous, right? V'samachta bechagecha, right? In Deuteronomy, it actually says, after the ingathering from your threshing floor and your vat, you shall hold the Feast of Booths, the holiday of Sukkot, for 7 days. V'samachta bechagecha, you shall be happy, rejoice in your festival with your son and your daughter and the Levite and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow. Everyone in the community shall all be happy. And so we have this interesting imperative, right? To be happy. And I want to think about that a little bit today, because we often connect this imperative with the famous song, "Don't Worry, Be Happy," right? That's sort of the mentality behind this imperative. But I think it's actually something different. How do you command someone to be happy? It's a hard thing to do. What if I don't want to be happy? What if I don't feel happy? How do I fulfill then the commandment? Are we saying if I can't be happy, then I'm not fulfilling one of the central commandments of the holiday of Sukkot? So that's my question for us today. What does it mean to be commanded to be happy? How do you understand that?
Well, behind it is gratitude. A gratitude for the harvest, which is the final one before winter. And so even if you don't feel happy, if you can at least feel grateful, that can make you somewhat happy.
Okay. So Michal says that behind this holiday, and I think you're correct, is the feeling of gratitude. This is a harvest holiday. It's a Thanksgiving holiday, right? And if you can key into that gratitude, if you can understand the gifts that you have in your life, even if life is difficult at the moment, there are still gifts that we have, then maybe we can key into some of that simcha, some of that happiness as well. Anybody else? This is the audience participation portion of our service. What do we think? Marge?
Go with cognitive theory, which is how you think, how you feel. It forces you to think deeply about a lot of aspects, and do that, you might find the things that you lost that didn't.
Excellent, excellent. Marge brings her therapy expertise, right? And with cognitive theory, how you think is how you feel. So if we can get ourselves to think along those lines, then maybe the feelings will follow from that as well. Anybody else? So there's lots of different explanations that the rabbis give for how to do this. Some are material and some are spiritual. So some rabbis go in the material way and they say, so what does it mean, right, to be happy? Well, they say in order to do that, you have to buy some new clothes or eat a meal, something that you haven't had that you really, really like. They have all of these sort of sweets and things like that to give to the kids. So there's that material, physical aspect of it, right? If I'm doing something I enjoy, then maybe I'm going to be happy, right? Even if I may be sad about something, I may be depressed about something, there may be something weighing on me, but we've all had that opportunity where our friends kind of grab us and take us somewhere, and it gets your mind off of it for a little while, and it brings back some of that feeling of joy. So maybe that's what the rabbis are saying, right? That even if we're struggling to find that joy, find that happiness, there's some physical things that we can do to help us, right? Physical things that we can do to help us. That's the physical side of things, and I think it's interesting, but I think it's actually less relevant and less potent than the other side of things, right? The Mishnah Torah Maimonides talks a little bit about joy and happiness, and he says, the joy which a person derives from doing good deeds and from loving God is a supreme form of joy. What's Rambam saying?
Do good towards others, take care of each other, which is a fundamental commandment, right? Be good to others.
Yeah, Rambam's kind of flipping it on its head if we think about it, right? The first one is people should do good for us, make us feel good, right? Give us things, buy us things, right? But the second one is actually a higher level of simcha, a higher level of joy is when we are doing good for somebody else. It's very powerful if we think about it, right? It's very powerful. And yet, I think there's even more, there's another layer to all of this. And some of our more ancient rabbis talk about it, but I want us to think about it actually from a modern voice. Rabbi Alan Liu wrote a book called This Is Real, and You Are Completely Unprepared. It's a very interesting book, actually. And he talks about joy in Sukkot specifically, right? Joy in Sukkot specifically. And he writes as follows. In the sukkah, a house that is open to the world, a house that freely acknowledges that it cannot be the basis for our security, the illusion of protection falls away. And suddenly, we are flush with our life, feeling our life, following our life, doing its dance step after another. And when we speak of joy, he continues, we are not speaking of fun. Joy is a deep release of the soul. And he actually argues, and it includes death and pain. Joy is any feeling felt fully, any experience that we give our whole being to. Rabbi Liu is redefining joy as instead of something that just feels good. Joy is that moment when we are fully engaged. Every aspect of our being, physical, emotional, spiritual, we're fully engaged in a moment. And of course, it's much more pleasant and much more fun when it's something that is positive and exciting, right? I'm going to encourage all of you later on tonight to fully engage in the joy and the fun of celebrating Aliyah's bat mitzvah. That's going to be very joyful. However, Rabbi Lou argues that that's not the complete definition of joy. We can be joyful even when life is hard because we're fully engaged. We're fully engaged. And our spirituality and our cognitive side and our physical side are working in tandem with each other to give us a full experience. He goes on to say, we are conditioned to choose pleasure and to reject pain, but the truth is, any moment of our life fully inhabited and fully felt, any immersion in the depth of life can be the source of deep joy. And we've seen it actually, right? We've seen it. We've all been with people in the midst of mourning, in the midst of Shiva, which is not a joyful time. But we see those moments when the mourner is really present with that person, is really remembering. And those are the times we see the smiles. Those are the times we see that person lift up a little bit, right? When they're full, even though it's sad, there can still be joy in that moment. And so I'm going to shift today our understanding of this third mitzvah of Sukkot. The first is to bring the four species together. The second is to build and dwell in a sukkah. And the third is to be fully engaged in your life. When we do that, it allows us access to parts of ourselves and parts of the world that we wouldn't have had access to before. And even in challenging, difficult times, it brings a sense of joy. That's the lesson for today. That is the mindset of Sukkot, and it's not going to be hard to feel those feelings as we watch our bat mitzvah, celebrate her accomplishments today, and as we celebrate with one another. Shabbat shalom, everyone.